I can't believe that, 23 months into this, I'm still having to come on these shows and fact-check this kind of nonsense propaganda from pro-Israel people. As you pointed out,
in a position to fact-check.
They are on the record. Orit Strouk. They are on. Yeah, I can actually fact-check. Let's give some facts. Bezalel Smotrich has said very clearly the hostages are not the priority.
You're not the representative of
the settlements
Mehdi
minister.
Hasan.
Can I speak without...
In a media landscape overflowing with noise, confusion, and carefully packaged narratives, moments like this remind us why sharp journalism still matters. Today's clip is one of those moments, a clash so tense, so unfiltered, and so revealing that it forces you to question who's really speaking the truth and who's just trying to outshout accountability. Before we dive into the full story, comment where you're watching from and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Now, let's get into it. In this heated exchange, you're about to watch Mehdi Hasan push back against an IDF spokesperson who seems far more interested in dominating the conversation than actually engaging with it. The tension doesn't just simmer, it erupts. Every time Mehdi tries to lay out a point, the spokesperson rushes in, talking over him, steering the discussion, and doing everything possible to block Mehdi from speaking. It's the classic playbook: overwhelm, interrupt, and confuse, hoping the viewer won't notice the lack of substance beneath all that noise. But clips like this show exactly why Mehdi Hasan remains such a force in political journalism. When someone tries this level of disruption, Mehdi doesn't crumble. He doesn't retreat. He stays razor focused, letting the audience see the contrast between calm, fact-based argument and frantic obstruction. So as we watch this moment play out, pay close attention. It's not just a disagreement, it's a real-time struggle between someone armed with facts and someone armed with volume. And by the end of this clip, that difference becomes impossible to ignore.
He represents an electorate, democratically elected, but he represents an electorate which is on the extreme sides of Israeli politics. I perhaps shouldn't belittle and call them fringe, but it is an extreme part of Israeli society. But if you look at what other parts, the majority, if you look at what hundreds of thousands of Israelis, left, right, and center, are out demonstrating and saying is, we want our hostages back, we want the war to end, and the moment we get our hostages back, then the war ends. And another very important thing, which of course Mehdi represented very poorly, was that there is no deal for all of the hostages. The current waiting is for Hamas to say, okay, we agree to hand over all of the hostages. Currently, what we have on the table is 10 live hostages and half of the murdered hostages, and that isn't good enough. We don't want Hamas to have any live hostages that they can have, because that means that the war continues, that means that the suffering will continue, and that is not what we want.
Okay, Mehdi.
I can't believe that, 23 months into this, I'm still having to come on these shows and fact-check this kind of nonsense propaganda from pro-Israel people. As you pointed out,
in a position to fact-check.
They are on the record. Orit Strouk. They are on. Yeah, I can actually fact-check. Let's give some facts. Bezalel Smotrich has said very clearly the hostages are not the priority.
You're not the representative of
the settlements minister.
Hasan.
Can I speak without being interrupted?
Let him speak, Jonathan.
You had a chance.
Jonathan, he
you
was
had a chance for your propaganda.
Jonathan, he was quiet.
I will interrupt you for the next 20 minutes.
Jonathan, he allowed you to speak without interruption. Let Mehdi do the same.
Fine.
You could come back in and lie again in a moment. I'll give the facts to the viewers. The finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, said very clearly that the hostages are not the priority. Ben Gvir has said a similar line. Orit Strouk, the settlements minister, said recently, we have to go into every area, even if the hostages die, even if they're unsafe, we have to do it. They have made that very clear. Gallant, the former defense minister, said Netanyahu was sacrificing the hostages. The hostages' families went to the homes of the Israeli cabinet just 9 days ago. They protested outside the government's homes and said, you are sacrificing our children on the altar of eternal war. Those are the words of the hostages' families, not the former IDF spokesman, Piers, who you brought on to lie on behalf of the Israeli military. So many lies he told there in that statement that he just gave this long rant. He doesn't want me to speak now, obviously, because the fact checks will hurt him. Again and again, they have said the hostages are not the priority. And this idea of fringe figures, as you said, Piers, Bezalel Smotrich is the finance minister. He said in May of this year, we are disassembling Gaza. We are turning it into piles of rubble. We are destroying the Gaza Strip. We are there to conquer, cleanse and remain. Those are the words of Smotrich. By the way, on the same day, Piers, Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister, put out a tweet saying, Bezalel, you have spoken the truth. You show leadership. So this is the entire government. It's not just the entire government. It's the country. A majority of Israelis say they want Palestinians expelled from the Gaza Strip, according to every poll. This is not a fringe view. This is the Israeli government This is Israeli society. And for Jonathan to say, I'm in the Hamas camp, come on, Jonathan, get some new lines. I'm not in the Hamas camp. I've never defended Hamas on this show once. Piers knows that. Although you come on this show to defend an Israeli military you were part of and spokesman for. You were part of an Israeli military that's being investigated at the ICJ for genocide. You're part of an Israeli military that was indicted at the International Criminal Court for war crimes and crimes against humanity. You're part of an Israeli military that the International Association of Genocide Scholars have said is a genocide. You're part of a military. You're part of a military that's being investigated by international courts. You're part of a military.
Well, I think, okay, hang on, let me jump in.
No, hold on, I'm finishing my point, Piers.
Jonathan, let me finish and I'll come to you.
You're part of a military that has been investigated for sexual violence and rape against Palestinians. Did that happen on your watch? Did you sign off on what the UN says is sexual and gender-based violence?
Let me ask Jonathan a question. Okay, Jonathan.
A military that bombed a hospital last week, Jonathan.
Okay,
your military bombed a hospital.
Let me ask Jonathan an IDF question.
What makes this entire exchange so compelling is how clearly it exposes a pattern we've seen time and time again whenever Mehdi Hasan steps into a high-pressure debate. Mehdi doesn't rely on theatrics or volume, he relies on precision. He walks into these chaotic moments with an almost surgical calm, and once the facts start rolling out, his opponents rarely know how to respond, and in this clip, that dynamic is on full display again. Because the truth is, whenever spokespeople tied to the IDF or the Israeli government appear in these conversations, the focus is rarely on genuine engagement. Instead, it often becomes an exercise in controlling the narrative, interrupting, reframing, and overwhelming the conversation before any uncomfortable facts can surface. But that strategy falls apart the moment Mehdi starts referencing exact dates, quotes, and documented statements. He doesn't just challenge them, he grounds every point in verifiable reality. And that's precisely why they struggle. When you're facing someone armed with timestamps, public statements, and direct quotes, deflection becomes obvious. This spokesperson wasn't trying to debate the substance of Mehdi's arguments. He was trying to destabilize the conversation, talk over him, rattle him, prevent the audience from hearing the core facts that undermine the official narrative. But Mehdi doesn't take the bait. He stays steady, factual, and completely unmoved by the noise. This pattern should look familiar by now. Over the years, we've seen countless defenders of Israeli government actions fall back on the same tactics, claim bias, accuse critics of being aligned with extremist groups, and avoid addressing the actual evidence. And every time Mehdi pushes back with documentation, you see the same reaction: frustration, interruption, and a quick shift away from substance. It's a predictable cycle because the facts themselves are incredibly difficult to counter. And that's what makes this clip so revealing. It's not simply about one spokesperson struggling in one interview. It speaks to a deeper issue, the challenge of defending positions that crumble the moment they're held up against the record. When you have to talk over someone to avoid addressing their evidence, it says more about the weakness of your argument than the strength of your conviction. So after watching this exchange, pay attention not just to what was said, but to how it was said, who relied on facts, and who relied on volume. That contrast tells the real story here. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. What stood out to you? Mehdi's calm command of the facts, the spokesperson's attempt to derail the conversation, or the broader pattern we keep seeing in these debates? Drop your take below. This is the Westminster.